Big story, of course, that has been coming is the Law Ministry of the country has now cleared an ordinance that would allow Jallikattu to effectively continue in Tamil Nadu, the sport to be played. Law Minister Ravi Shankar spoke to India Today's sister channel Aaj Tak. Listen in.
देखिए, भारत सरकार प्रदेश सरकार के साथ मिलकर ये कार्रवाई कर रही है और बहुत ही जल्दी हम कार्रवाई करने जा रहे हैं और ऐसी कार्रवाई जो वैधानिक हो और जो वहां की भावनाओं की चिंता करे, वहां की सांस्कृतिक और परंपराओं की प्रथा की चिंता करे, ये हम कार्रवाई करने जा रहे हैं और हमारे प्रधानमंत्री और हम लोग सभी तमिलनाडु और तमिल लोगों की भावनाओं का सम्मान करते हैं और उनके संस्कार और संस्कृति के प्रवाह का सम्मान करते हैं।
सर, क्योंकि ये मामला सब जुडिस है, आज सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने 1 हफ्ते के लिए इस पे फैसले को रोका भी है, ऐसे में किस तरीके के सॉल्यूशंस होंगे? क्योंकि स्टेट गवर्नमेंट ने पहले ही ऑर्डिनेंस लाने की बात कही थी और केंद्र सरकार को भेजा है।
स्टेट गवर्नमेंट की जो भी अनुशंसा है उस पर हम त्वरित कार्रवाई कर रहे हैं, बहुत ही जल्दी, संविधान सम्मत, विधि सम्मत, ये मैं आपसे आश्वस्त करना चाहूंगा। और भारत सरकार इस देश के कोने की प्रथाओं का और उनकी संस्कारों का पूरा सम्मान करे।
The centre will respect the culture and traditions of every Indian state, including Tamil Nadu, is what the law minister is giving an assurance. Remember, it's been 100 hours and counting, with the protesters continuing to stage massive protests in support of Jallikattu. It continued for a 4th straight day across Tamil Nadu and indeed in other parts of the country where there are large Tamil populations as well. I just want to get quick reactions from our reporters as to how people are now looking at the ordinance having been passed. I'm joined by Akshaya from Chennai's Marina Beach and Revti from Madurai. Is the news finally sinking in, Akshaya, there that Jallikattu now could be a reality in the next 48 hours, as a result of which are people finally willing to give up their protest, Akshaya? And do they see this as a moment of victory?
Well, Rajdeep, the stage here is very exciting for now. At least we're hearing that there's a lot of celebration going around all through the place. People are all happy that the ordinance is passed right now. They're also saying that unless and until the Vadi Vassal gets open, the entry through which the bulls come into the arena is open, they are not going to move out of the place. What exactly are you guys going to do now? The ordinance is going to be passed. The law minister has said it is going to happen. Now, what do you have to say? Are you happy?
Yeah, we are happy, but only when the Vadi Vassal opens, we are going to open our door. And someone, Radha Rajan, has posted a cheap comment on Tamilians. Nothing is wrong with us. We are being carried like a princess of Tamil land, and we have been more secure and safe here more than our home.
Rajdeep, the entire situation is very electrical. What we saw on the first day was a mere 1,000, but today we are seeing that more than lakhs of people joined here, all of them in a celebration mode. This is a victory for the people's movement, is what they're calling, Rajdeep.
Victory for the people's movement. Revati, Rajivan, there in Madurai, are they seeing this as a big victory?
Well, no, Rajdeep. On the first day of Pongal, 6 days ago, I spoke to the locals, and to this day, their demand has not been diluted. They are sticking to just one thing, that they want the permission to go ahead and conduct Jallikattu. So they are sticking to that. Youngsters come a significant part of the protesters. Now that the ordinance has been cleared, isn't it a victory for you? Will you be stopping the protest now?
We won't stop until the clear and sheer importance that being provided by PM, we won't stop our protest.
Okay, what about you? Are you going to stop the protest or not?
No, we can't stop the protest until the central government gives the permission to conduct the Jallikattu. This is not a game, this is our pride, our culture, this is our regional game, this is our traditional.
Okay, it's not just about passing an ordinance, it's not about meeting, it's not about giving a word of promise, it's about saying, go ahead, now you can conduct Jallikattu, you can conduct Jallikattu on this day. So it's a specific sentence, it's a specific assurance, permission that they are looking for. And in the last 7 days from the time Pongal started, I've been speaking to these locals, and not once, not one day, not one of them have differed in their opinion. Remember, they come from different backgrounds and do not come from any organizations or unions, but they have just one common demand which has not been diluted even today, Rajdeep.
So effectively, they want to actually see Jallikattu being played once again in Tamil Nadu. The law being, ordinance being passed is clearly not enough for those voices there. These protests, remember, have crossed 100 hours and more. And therefore, now it's become a legal battle What can be done? Will this ordinance sustain? Is the ordinance the right step? Has a very dangerous precedent been set by the center that if you have protests on the streets, those protests eventually can result in an ordinance being passed by a state government or a central government? Or is this a moment for people power? That's my big question today. People power has won, or has a dangerous precedent been set? And I'm going to go to some of the country's top lawyers. Soli Sorabji, Harish Salve are joining me, former Solicitor General, former Attorney General, also Additional Solicitor General Vikas Singh with us, KN Bhatt, who's also been an Additional Solicitor General himself, also someone who's closely been identified with the Karnataka government. Appreciate all of you joining us. I want to come to you, Mr. Harish Salve, first. How do you believe that the centre has acted in this case? The Environment Ministry's new notification being challenged, seeking urgent hearings, the entire manner in which this entire case has taken place. How do you believe the Environment Ministry's new notification removing the bull as a performing animal will now be seen by the Supreme Court? Do you believe that moving this ordinance by the Home Ministry is the right step?
Well, I would not like to speculate on what the Supreme Court will do, but this is the problem of the court getting into issues which are of high popular emotion. And primarily it should be for governments to decide of what animals can be within or without a protection. And I think what has happened in Chennai, the biggest casualty has been the majesty of the court. Supreme Court's orders leading to popular protests is something which is a threat to the existence of the kind of structure we have of our democracy. And I think we have to take a harder and a deeper look to see that this is never ever repeated in the history of India, in the future of India.
You know, but Mr. Salve, organizers of Jallikattu and bullock cart races argue these are traditional practices closely associated with village life. The Supreme Court said that just because the bull taming sport of Jallikattu was centuries old tradition, it cannot be justified. Isn't there a middle part to the stalemate? The fact that people protested, should a court recognize people power and thereby try and find a middle path rather than banning a sport that is so intrinsically linked to the traditions of a state?
See, there is today an idea, and today with the power of social media, sometimes ideas acquire their own life and their own vigor. Today, the idea which has been successfully sold to so many people is that it's not a matter of a sport, it's a matter of the identity of Tamilians and in Tamil Nadu. That's a very, very powerful idea, and if it has been successfully sold, it is the duty of the elected representatives of the people to deal with and address the idea. Everything can't be put down by brute force. And they have to deal with that idea sensitively and try and make sure that second time they are not caught napping. If there is a similar situation in which again there is an idea which can develop and be sold like this.
You know, it's interesting the way you're putting...
These are very sensitive things in a democracy.
No, it's interesting you're putting it. An idea has been sold through possibly social media. The idea that Jallikattu was intrinsically linked to Tamil culture and identity was successfully sold. Soli Sorabji, you were on my program last night. You called it mob hysteria. Others are today calling it people power. You heard Harish Salve saying that this has been sold through social media as a powerful idea. Are you willing to revise your opinion from yesterday when you called it mob hysteria and emotional pitch that cannot in a way blackmail the courts?
Nay, look, Rajdeep, first of all, I haven't seen the terms of the ordinance.
Yes.
What is the ordinance purport to do? Does it remove some of the things with the Supreme Court judgment? Is it in conformity to the Supreme Court judgment? Or does it say, despite Supreme Court saying that certain practices are cruel, they are not cruel? In that case, of course, to my mind, people's sentiments cannot overrule really another basic principle of our Constitution. That's the independence of the judiciary. So long as the judgment of the Supreme Court is there, is not reviewed, it must be respected. And anything contrary thereto, I think is not just done. It's not correct.
So to that extent,
now,
are you saying, to that extent, Mr. Sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt. Are you saying, therefore, the ordinance may well be struck down by the Supreme Court?
Yeah, go on.
Would the ordinance be struck down if it does not conform to the Supreme Court judgment that originally banned Jallikattu?
It can be vulnerable because it's in defiance of the Supreme Court judgment. I can understand if it's in the conformity with it, with certain adaptations here and there, but if it's in direct defiance of the Supreme Court judgment, it would be very constitutionally, legally vulnerable and may well be struck down. And I don't understand it. People's power. After all, there's another thing. The majesty of the court. The importance of the judgment of the Supreme Court, isn't that an important principle also? Are we to be pressurized into bringing an ordinance because of the feelings of some people on certain matters?
Is this people power at work?
It's a bad precedent, Rajdeep.
You know, it's an interesting...
some other groups will do the same thing.
It's an interesting way you're posing that debate. I don't know if I'm still joined by Pradeep Kumar, because he is a young Jallikattu supporter. Remember, lots of youngsters have chosen to support Jallikattu. Pradeep Kumar, is this people power at work? And do you really believe that this should now be seen as a precedent for the future? That whenever people's sentiments are affected, then they will go to the court and challenge, they will go to the center of their state government or protest on the street and challenge what is the majesty of the Supreme Court? You're hearing Soli Sorabji and you've heard what has been said by Harish Salve. How do you respond as a young Tamilian?
As a young Tamilian, we just wanted to say a few things about the Jallikattu. First thing, every people around the India and around the world thinking that Jallikattu is a cruelty sport. But as a Tamilian perspective, Jallikattu is not a cruelty sport. It is name called as a Eru Thaludal, which means bull embracing. So first thing which the India should learn about that is the term which we look at that, what is Jallikattu?
Mr. Pradeep Kumar, I want to, no, 1 minute. I am asking, you know, because these arguments have been played out earlier, that it is a bull embracing sport. My point is, you are hearing from the top lawyers of the country saying that this is also an affront to the majesty of the Supreme Court. All these arguments were made before the Supreme Court. They were rejected by the court. Today, when an ordinance has been passed, do you see this as people power being more important than the Supreme Court? Do you believe people power matters more than what the court says?
Exactly. I believe the people power is more than our Supreme Court, because this rule is made for the people around the India. So the rule is made for people and not for, and the rule is not only for the people, and which we want to not, we just don't want to oppose the Parliament's Supreme Court's decision. But Supreme Court should understand our feelings and internal things, and
Supreme Court should understand your internal feelings and sentiments. Vikas Singh, quickly respond to that. Supreme Court should understand the feelings and sentiments. Therefore, the centre had no choice in a way to pass this ordinance. They have respected the sentiments and feelings of the people. Do you believe that the law must work on sentiment?
I think as of now...
No, 1 minute. Let Vikas Singh respond.
Well, we are talking of when the ordinance... When we are talking about the ordinance, we are not talking about the Supreme Court, because these are two different authorities which are exercising their constitutional power. One is the Supreme Court when it says that this is illegal, and the other is the central government, which is actually, you know, sort of wanting to assuage the people of Tamil Nadu and wanting to bring in this ordinance. The fact that the central government is bringing this ordinance doesn't mean that it has the stamp of approval of the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court were to get guided by these kind of things, then tomorrow Ram Mandir will be justified if the majority of the people on the street say that we want to build Ram Mandir here and now, and we will not wait for the Supreme Court judgment. There are similar such emotive issues which, if taken on the street, will lead to complete anarchy. That if street power is to decide how things are to be done in this country, then I think it will be, and I personally feel that this kind of ordinance bringing by the central government is actually setting up a very dangerous precedent, because once you start, and what the ordinance can do, the ordinance can only take away the basis of the Supreme Court judgment. Now, the basis of the Supreme Court judgment is the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. So if you bring in a legislation which says that
that act will have to be amended.
One of the exceptions to the act is that you can kill animals for some religious.
That act will have to be amended.
So I don't know whether the ordinance is doing that. If it is not doing that, then it will. If the act is not being amended through the ordinance, then the ordinance is bound to be set aside, because you are not changing the basis of the Supreme Court judgment. You can change the basis of the Supreme Court judgment, but you can't bring in a law which is contrary to what the Supreme Court says.
Right.
This is a fine distinction which I'm sure the central government would have considered. So that will be seen. I've also not had the occasion
to
just
see a minute. Sir, just a minute. I can tell you.
Saying that if a large number of people.
Sir, hold on. I think you made your point. There will be a difficulty for the Supreme Court order to fit in with what the ordinance actually says. Mr. Bhatt, you come from a state, Karnataka. You know what happened a few months ago with the Kaveri water dispute. Karnataka refused to accept it, said we will not give water to Tamil Nadu. Are all these dangerous precedents that have been set? Today the precedent is, if there is people power, if large people gather, virtually hold a state to ransom, some would say, the state government will bend, the center will bend. Forget the Supreme Court. It doesn't matter. In a democracy, people power matters.
I agree with you that people power has to be respected. In the sense, for example, you took the example of Karnataka.
Yes.
There was no water to be released. So the people of Karnataka were agitating, and they persuaded their government not to release water because there was no water. But anyway, that is besides.
But aren't these all dangerous precedents? Why have a Supreme Court? Let's forget the Supreme Court. Let's tell the government to bring in ordinances every time the people feel that their sentiments are hurt, that their traditions have been affected.
In this particular case, unless I read the ordinance, I can't make a comment. The ordinance might have amended the Prevention of Cruelty Act to fall in line with the Nagaraja's case of 2014.
Yes, what we are being told, this is a state government ordinance, not a central ordinance. Remember, Prevention of Cruelty to Animals is a central government act.
But then it is a concurrent subject. State government also can amend, so long as the president gives the assent.
Do you see this as people power having won out?
That will happen.
Do you see as a victory for people power?
I first of all, one step back, Rajdeep. I would not, if I were a judge of the Supreme Court, I would not have gone to the extent of making law regarding Jallikattu.
You would not have got into this?
No, got into this type of controversy. It is possible for the legislature to make a law that Jallikattu has to be prohibited. Going into the nitty-gritty and saying that some animals are tortured, some people make the animals to drink alcohol, etc., etc. These are not what the matter.
Let me get Soli Sorabji on that. Do you think, in conclusion, Soli Sorabji, the Supreme Court should stay away from issues like Jallikattu, knowing that these are sensitive issues?
No, Supreme Court has a duty to intervene when it is warranted. There's a question about it. I don't understand this. I agree we don't know the ordinance. Question is the ordinance by and large in conformity to the Supreme Court judgment, or is it in defiance of it? If the Supreme Court has said practices A, B, C, D are cruel, and the ordinance says no, they are not cruel, they are permissible, then to my mind the ordinance will be bad. It can't defy the Supreme Court order.
Right.
Rajdeep, look at Sati. Sati was very much part of the tradition. If this argument is correct, Sati would never have been abolished, because some people thought it shouldn't be. So please remember this. It's all very well sentiments of the people, but as a sentiments of an Indian also, to observe the majesty of the law and the majesty of the court. That has to be respected. It will lead to a very dangerous precedent different groups can make different demands, and will every time it will be yielded to, and you pass ordinances.
I take your point. Those are wise and sane words. I just want to end with Harish Salve here, because we are going to go in a moment, as I said, to the United States where the Trump inauguration is taking place. But I want to focus one last time to try and find a final permanent solution to Jallikattu. Do you believe, Harish Salve, can the state government now pass its own law? The Supreme Court has time and again made it clear it will not lift the ban on Jallikattu. In such a stalemate, in the federal spirit, do state and central governments have the powers to not accept what the Supreme Court says and draw up their own legislation?
See, exactly. Now the problem is, there are areas of judicial review of state action in the matter of legislation, and they over the decades have been very carefully contoured. If what the state does is plainly unconstitutional, it is the constitutional duty of the courts, the High Court and the Supreme Court, to stop the state in its tracks. And where the court does do that, then it becomes a constitutional obligation on the popular government to fall in line. This is what casts a huge responsibility on the court, that the court has to be very careful to pick the right causes and to deal with them in a way that you do not disable popular governments in matters of policy and policy choices.
Interesting you are putting it that way. Clearly what this has revealed is the different fault lines that exist. There has been the battle between Tamil subnationalism versus, some would say, imposition from the center, Supreme Court orders versus the will of the people. All of this has played out in Tamil Nadu. We believe that we could be reaching the end game now that this ordinance has been effectively brought in. We are just waiting for the presidential assent. But remember, it could even now be set aside by the Supreme Court. We will wait and see how this plays out in the days ahead in Chennai. I appreciate you all joining us, but from Chennai, I have to shift to the big spotlight.